What if I told you that the reason you're seeing this right now is because some quieter, deeper part of you has already begun reaching toward a different timeline, one you can feel but haven't yet named? And what if I told you that tonight, in the soft boundary between your final thoughts and the moment you drift toward sleep, you'll enter the most responsive state your consciousness will touch all day, a state where the zero-point field, the silent canvas underlying every possible version of your life, becomes unusually sensitive to the way you breathe, the way you feel, and the way you observe yourself. This isn't prediction, and it isn't magic. It's the simple recognition that your inner state acts like a tuning fork, and certain evenings, certain thresholds amplify that tuning more than others. If you're seeing this, you're standing at one of those thresholds, not a dramatic doorway, not a cosmic portal, but a subtle shift in your own perceptual field, the one that opens when life becomes just quiet enough for you to hear the faint background hum of your own awareness. You've felt it before, that sensation when the world pauses for half a second, when the air around you thickens as if waiting for your next breath to decide something important. Most people ignore that moment. They tighten their shoulders, rush to the next task, swallow the discomfort, scroll, distract, or numb. They miss the invitation. But tonight you don't have to, because tonight is less about the clock and more about your state, your coherence, your stillness, your capacity to witness yourself without collapsing into old stories. The zero-point field, as a metaphor, represents that foundational quiet from which every possibility can rise. Not a scientific claim, but a poetic mirror for the way potential gathers before it becomes form. Think of it like the darkness behind your closed eyes, seemingly empty, yet filled with everything you've ever imagined. And right now, the field inside you is more impressionable than usual. Not because something external is happening, but because you're finally slowing down enough to notice the intelligence moving beneath your thoughts. You were meant to tune tonight, not because you're special in a grandiose sense, but because you're sensitive in a way most people never allow themselves to be. You can sense the subtle shifts inside you the way certain memories tug at your breath, the way certain choices tighten your chest, the way a small moment of honesty can soften everything. That sensitivity isn't weakness, it's your instrument. And like any instrument, it can fall out of tune when life pulls you too quickly. Tonight is your chance to draw from the stillness beneath all that noise, to feel the difference between the river of your thoughts and the riverbank of your awareness. To remember that, before you try to change your circumstances, you must change the way you meet them, not by force, not by effort, simply by observing yourself with enough clarity that the field inside you settles, the way a lake settles when the wind stops. So, as you continue, let this be your pattern: interrupt. Let this be the moment you pause, inhale gently, and realize that the next few minutes are not content, they are calibration. They are the soft return to the version of you that remembers how to listen. Because tonight, you are not here to manifest wildly or demand anything from reality. You are here to tune, and tuning, in the quantum sense of your inner landscape, is how everything begins. You've had glimpses of that inner stillness, of the riverbank where you can watch your thoughts flow by without being dragged downstream. Yet, if you're honest, most days don't feel like that. Most days feel like you wake up already inside the river, caught in a current that started long before your alarm went off, before you even remember your first thought. Your body has already tuned itself to yesterday's unfinished emails, last week's tension, the argument that still echoes somewhere behind your ribs. This is the reality loop, the invisible cycle, where the same triggers lead to the same breath, the same meaning, the same actions, and the same evidence that convinces you nothing can truly change. It's not a punishment. It's simply how an untended field keeps regrowing the same patterns. Think of a typical trigger. It can be small. A message you weren't ready to answer. A number in your bank account. An unread notification from someone you're afraid to disappoint. That trigger flashes across your awareness like lightning across the sky. The first thing that changes isn't your thoughts. It's your breath. Your inhale shortens. Your chest subtly tightens. Your diaphragm moves less freely. You might not notice it, but your internal river starts to rush. That shift in breath instantly alters your state, your body's background weather. The sky of your awareness is still vast, but your clouds suddenly thicken and darken. From that state, your mind begins to interpret. Meaning blooms in milliseconds. I'm behind. I'm failing. I'm not safe. I can't trust this. Nothing ever works out for me. The trigger becomes a story. And the story doesn't just sit there. It instructs your nervous system how to be. Your shoulders round, your jaw tightens, your stomach clenches. That meaning now drives your next action. Maybe you avoid the message. Maybe you doom scroll. Maybe you lash out. Maybe you make yourself small and compliant. Whatever the action, it's chosen from the state you're in, not from the truth of who you are on the riverbank. Then comes the evidence. Because you delayed, the project suffers. Because you avoided the conversation, the distance grows. Because you reacted from fear, the other person closes. Life mirrors back the exact tone you broadcasted, and your mind, seeing this echo, nods and says, "See, I knew it. This is just how it is for me." The loop completes trigger, breath, state, meaning, action, evidence, stronger belief. Without realizing it, you encode that pattern into your inner field. The next time something similar happens, the loop runs faster, less conscious choice, more automatic playback. The field of possibility around you narrows, not because reality shrank, but because your perceptual lens did. Over time, this loop doesn't just shape your days, it shapes your identity. You stop saying, "I feel anxious," and start saying, "I am anxious." You stop saying, "I'm experiencing scarcity," and start saying, "I am someone who never has enough." The clouds of momentary emotion start masquerading as the sky itself. You forget there is a clear, spacious awareness beneath the weather. You forget there is a riverbank. You begin to believe you are the river. And in that forgetting, the 0-point field inside you, this quiet, neutral ground of pure potential, gets covered by layers of habitual tension, like fertile soil sealed under concrete. This is the perceptual crisis, not that life is against you, but that you've been seeing from within the loop instead of from the stillness beyond it. The loop is self-reinforcing because it feels true. Your feelings match your thoughts match your actions, and your actions generate results that confirm everything your old story whispered. It's completely understandable. Your system is trying to protect you by predicting what's coming based on what came before. But there's a cost. The cost is freshness. The cost is surprise. The cost is the version of you that might exist on a different timeline, drawing from the same 0-point field, but encoding something entirely new into it. You might notice how certain themes keep repeating in your life, the same kind of boss in a different company, the same emotional pattern with different partners, the same chance you don't take because it feels not the right time. It can feel like fate, as if some external script is being handed to you. But look closely and you'll see the loop inside. The same type of trigger flips the same internal switch, the same tightening in your chest, the same meaning attached, the same protective action, and then reality, faithfully mirroring that sequence back to you. The universe isn't punishing you, It's reflecting what your inner field is broadcasting. None of this is your fault, but it is your responsibility once you see it. The good news is that the loop isn't powered by the trigger. It's powered by the unobserved moment right after the trigger, the instant where your breath shifts and your state collapses into an old pattern. That is the first point of access to the 0-point field within you. That tiny pause is the gap, the subtle threshold where you can either replay the old track or gently place the needle on a new one. When ignored, it runs the same pattern. When noticed, it becomes a doorway. This is why tonight matters. Not because the cosmos has singled you out, but because you're ready to see the loop with enough clarity to stop blaming yourself and start witnessing yourself. You're ready to recognize that your breath is not just a background function, but the first brushstroke that colors your inner sky. And you're ready to experiment with a different way of meeting the trigger, not by trying to control the outer situation, but by tending the field of awareness within. In the next part, we'll step into the quantum idea behind this, not as equations on a board, but as the lived experience of being the observer, the still riverbank from which new realities can begin. To understand how you shift the loop, you have to step into the quantum idea not as a scientific theorem, but as a metaphor for your lived experience. When people talk about the observer effect, they often reduce it to a slogan, "Your thoughts create reality." But the real power of this idea isn't in your thoughts at all, it's in your state. Your state is the frequency of your inner field, your breath, your posture, the openness of your chest, the softness of your attention, the spaciousness behind your eyes. These aren't metaphysical abstractions, they're subtle, felt qualities that shape how you meet each moment. When you shift your state, the way reality organizes around you shifts too. Think of the quantum field not as an external ocean of possibility, but as the inner stillness beneath your thoughts, the 0-point field within you, where everything feels momentarily unconstructed. That place where you haven't yet decided what the moment means, where your breath hasn't collapsed into fear or tension. You've touched this field more times than you realize. It's present in those instants when time slows down during a crisis, and you notice details you'd normally miss. It shows up when you witness something beautiful, and for a second your mind goes silent and your heart feels wide. It appears when a conversation touches something real, and both people sense a stillness settling between them. That pause, that soft expansion, is the lived version of the 0-point field. Reality feels heavy when you're inside the loop, because your attention collapses too quickly into old interpretations. The observer effect, metaphorically, is about extending that pause, expanding the moment before you collapse the meaning. In physics, observing a possibility influences its outcome. In lived experience, the way you observe yourself influences the quality of your next choice. The collapse isn't an external event, it's an internal shift the moment you decide, consciously or unconsciously, what the trigger means. And because most people collapse into old meanings instantly, they keep reinforcing old timelines. Imagine you're looking at a blank canvas and you have a brush in your hand. If you hurry, you'll paint whatever your muscle memory knows how to paint. That's unconscious creation. But if you pause, even for a breath, you notice the empty space first. You tune yourself before the stroke. That pause is where new timelines become available. It's the same with your internal world. When you slow down and observe yourself, your inhale, your chest, your thoughts passing like clouds, you stop painting from habit and begin painting from awareness. Coherence. Another quantum metaphor isn't about perfection or positivity. It's about internal alignment. Think of coherence as the moment your breath, your attention, and your body agree on a single tone. When you're incoherent, Part of you wants to move forward while another part tightens, resists, or hides. When you're coherent, your breath deepens naturally. Your shoulders soften, and you feel yourself drop out of your head and into your presence. You've had glimpses of this moments when you spoke with honesty and felt grounded. Moments when a challenge didn't overwhelm you because your inner field stayed steady. In those moments, people respond to you differently. Opportunities feel closer. Time feels more forgiving. That is coherence. Probability, too, is not an external lottery. It's internal weather. When you're incoherent, your choices narrow because your nervous system is scanning for danger, not possibility. You perceive fewer options because your body is bracing. But when you're coherent, your system interprets the world through a wider lens. You perceive opportunities you previously dismissed. You respond with creativity instead of reactivity. You read people more intuitively because you're not preoccupied with your own storms. The field inside you becomes calmer, and reality reflects that calm by offering more stable options. This is why even small shifts in your inner field can lead to disproportionate changes in your external experiences. If you've ever made a single conscious breath during an argument and watched the entire tone soften, you've experienced the quantum metaphor directly. You changed your internal state, and the external interaction reorganized around it. Not because you forced it, but because coherence is contagious. People feel it. Life feels it. The moment you return to the riverbank, the river itself seems to change. Think back to a time when someone looked at you with genuine calm and presence. You felt safer, more open, more grounded. That person didn't heal you. They reminded your system what alignment feels like. That reminder is what the observer effect means on a human level. Your presence influences the field inside and around you. The 0-point field metaphor is simply the reminder that before any story, any reaction, or any assumption, there is a stillness within you capable of choosing differently. When you breathe from your chest's upper tension, your field encodes urgency. When you breathe from your belly with softness and awareness, your field encodes openness. This encoding is what collapses probability into lived experience. It's why the same situation can feel hopeful one day and hopeless the next, because the quality of your inner observer shifts how you interpret the moment. And interpretation is reality's doorway. So, the quantum idea isn't about forcing outcomes. It's about tuning the observer within you to a more coherent frequency. It's about noticing the moment before meaning forms. It's about letting the sky of your awareness become bigger than the clouds moving across it. When you observe yourself without collapsing into the old loop, you create a small opening, a subtle gap where something new can emerge. That gap is your access point to the 0-point field, not out there, but in here, in the stillness beneath the river. In the next part, we turn to the ancient metaphors that described this same inner field in symbols, stories, and breath practices long before the modern language of quantum theory existed, long before anyone used the language of quantum fields. Ancient civilizations described the inner landscape of consciousness with metaphors that sound remarkably similar to what you are beginning to experience. They didn't talk about probability collapse or coherence. They spoke in symbols: doors, thresholds, winds, trees, and the quiet space between breaths. These metaphors weren't ornamental, they were maps for navigating the same inner stillness you're tuning into tonight. Consider Egypt in their temples. The journey from the outer courtyard into the innermost sanctuary was not just architectural, it was psychological. Each chamber represented a layer of the self, moving from noise and sunlight into increasing silence and darkness. The deepest chamber, where only a few could enter, wasn't a place of spectacle. It was a place of stillness. They called this stillness the silence before creation, the moment before Ra breathed the world into being. In their initiations, seekers were taught that creation didn't happen in the light, but in the pause before the light. This pause was the zero-point field in poetic form, the fertile darkness where all potential slept unshaped. You and I touch this same stillness in the gap between breaths, the moment where nothing is required and everything is possible. Buddhism offers another bridge. In anapanasati, the practice of mindful breathing, practitioners were trained to follow the breath all the way in and all the way out, not to control it, but to become intimate with its texture. The breath was seen as a messenger, a conveyor between form and emptiness. The Buddha compared the mind to a sky and thoughts to clouds, reminding practitioners that awareness is inherently spacious, untouched by passing weather. This metaphor isn't just poetic, it's instructional. When you observe your thoughts the way you would observe clouds softly, without grabbing or pushing, you begin to feel the still sky behind them. That sky is the inner field you're learning to tune. In that sky, you begin noticing the subtle gap before each thought forms, the space where coherence gathers. This is the same place you entered when your breath slowed down in the earlier moments of this script. Kabbalah, too, speaks of this inner structure. The tree of life isn't a literal diagram. It's a map of descending and ascending states of consciousness. At the top sits Keter, the zero point, the crown, the unformed source from which everything emanates. Below, it flows a sequence of energies, each narrowing possibility into form. But Kabbalists emphasize that the journey wasn't only top-down, it was also inward-upward. The seeker returns to Keter not by climbing, but by remembering the stillness within, the pure awareness that existed before stories, fears, identities, or patterns. They described this return as touching the Ruach and Neshama, the breath and soul wind, two layers of consciousness that move like invisible rivers through your being. Ruach is the emotional wind, the breath that stirs your internal weather. Neshama is the higher breath, the subtle stillness that watches without being moved. When you breathe consciously, you aren't manipulating oxygen. You're letting Ruach settle so Neshama can be felt again. You're letting the winds calm so the sky becomes visible. All three traditions understood a truth. Modern language sometimes obscures transformation begins in stillness, not effort. In Egypt, stillness was the womb of creation. In Buddhism, stillness was the clear sky mind behind the clouds. In Kabbalah, stillness was the crown above all form. These metaphors describe the same inner shift you've begun sensing tonight, the shift from reacting to observing, from tightening to breathing, from collapsing into a story to resting in the field beneath all stories. Imagine the Egyptian initiate stepping from the bright outer world into the cool shadow of the temple's first chamber. As their eyes adjust, the noise of the marketplace fades. Their breath deepens without effort. They walk deeper still, each chamber dimmer, quieter. By the time they reach the innermost room, they're not entering a place, they're entering a state. A stillness so complete it feels like standing inside the zero-point field itself. This inner chamber exists in you as well. Each conscious breath is a step inward. Each moment of observation is a torch guiding you further. Nothing needs to be forced. The temple opens naturally when you slow down enough to enter, or picture the Buddhist monk on a mountain, watching clouds drift across a vast sky. They don't chase the clouds or try to clear them. They simply observe them until the sky reveals itself as the constant. The sky doesn't improve itself. It simply remains open, allowing everything to pass. When you watch your own thoughts with this openness, You touch the same spacious awareness. You feel the riverbank again. You sense the stillness behind the breath. In that stillness, you reconnect with the part of you that is not trapped in the loop. Or picture a Kabbalist tracing the pathways of the tree of life, not as a ladder to climb, but as a reminder that divine presence is braided into the breath. When they inhale, they touch ruach, the inner winds of feeling. When they exhale, they settle into neshama, the quiet breath of the observer. Each breath is an ascent and descent simultaneously, a cycle of remembering and releasing. The tree becomes not a structure outside, but a map of their inner field. These metaphors endure because they speak to the universal experience of being human, of struggling, looping, forgetting, and then remembering the stillness beneath everything. They remind you that tuning your inner field isn't new, it's ancient. It's what humans have been doing for thousands of years whenever they closed their eyes, breathed deeply, and sensed something larger moving inside them. In the next part, we bring this from metaphor into direct experience, a simple, gentle, repeatable practice that lets you enter your inner temple on demand and begin tuning the field from within. To move from understanding to embodiment, you need a practice, not a technique for fixing yourself, but a gentle way of meeting your own awareness. Think of this less as an exercise and more as entering the inner chamber we've been describing. You're not trying to breathe correctly. You're learning to listen to your system with the kind of attention most people reserve for sunsets, sacred places, or loved ones they've missed. This is not medical advice. It is simply an educational, contemplative practice meant to help you tune your awareness. Begin by noticing where you are right now. Let your eyes rest softly or close if that feels comfortable. Don't try to deepen your breath yet. Don't try to relax. Instead, treat your body like a landscape you're visiting after a long journey. Sense the temperature of the air on your skin. Notice the subtle rise and fall of your chest. Become aware of the way the ground or chair supports you. Let yourself settle for one moment, not by changing anything, but by noticing what's already here. Now bring your attention to your inhale. Don't guide it. Don't shape it. Let it come to you. Imagine you're watching a quiet wave approach the shore. Feel the air traveling through your nostrils, widening your ribs, softening your abdomen. When the inhale completes, notice the tiny pause that follows the gap we spoke about earlier. Don't hold your breath, just sense that instant where everything stops. Then let your exhale happen like a wave receding, just as natural, just as unforced. Again, notice the pause. These pauses are doorways into the 0-point field inside you. Not dramatic portals, just simple moments where your system stops moving long enough for you to feel the stillness beneath your thoughts. As you breathe this way for another cycle or two, bring your attention to your chest. Many people hold old stories here: defensiveness, grief, protection. Imagine placing your awareness on your chest like you would place a warm hand on a frightened animal. Gentle, respectful, curious. Notice whether the breath expands this area or avoids it. If it avoids it, don't push, simply witness. The witnessing itself begins to soften the field. Now, shift your awareness lower, to your diaphragm, the band of muscle beneath your ribs. This place often reflects the pace of your inner life. If it feels tight or hesitant, acknowledge that. You've carried yourself through many storms. There's nothing wrong. As you breathe, imagine the diaphragm as a doorway that opens just a little more with each gentle exhale. Move awareness into your belly. This is where instinct and intuition live. Many people feel numbness here because life has trained them to ignore their gut feelings. For now, don't try to awaken anything. Just listen. Let the breath drop deeper. as if your inhale is a small lantern illuminating the inner chamber of your being. The deeper your awareness descends, the quieter your thoughts become, not because you force silence, but because your attention is returning to its natural depth. This is the basic practice. Inhale gently. Observe the pause. Exhale gently. Observe the pause. And listen to your internal landscape as if it has something to tell you. You're not trying to solve anything. You're letting the inner field settle the way a lake settles when the wind stops. For daily life, here are micro protocols, brief moments where you can access this same coherence. The 3-second anchor. When a trigger arises, don't respond immediately. Instead, inhale for a soft count of 2, feel the pause, then exhale for a soft count of 2. This returns you to the riverbank long enough to choose your next action, rather than collapse into habit. The shoulders scan. Before entering a conversation or sending a message, bring awareness to your shoulders. If they're raised, let them drop slightly on your exhale. This single shift often changes the tone of your interactions. The diaphragm. Check in. When you feel overwhelmed, place one hand gently below your ribs or just imagine doing so. Notice whether your breath reaches your hand. If not, slow the next 2 breaths and let the diaphragm expand by a single millimeter. This tiny movement can soften your entire internal field. The heart softening. When sadness, frustration, or defensiveness rises, place your awareness on your heart not to fix it, but to acknowledge it. The moment the heart feels seen, breath naturally deepens. Meaning begins dissolving. The inner field steadies, the gap awareness. At least once today, pause after an exhale and linger in the gap, not by holding your breath, but by noticing the moment before the next inhale comes. That gap is your access point to the stillness beneath your stories. Even 1 second inside it can reset your entire trajectory. Remember, your nervous system responds not to force, but to presence. These gentle practices signal to your inner field that it is safe to settle. Once it settles, your state shifts. Once your state shifts, the loop weakens. You reconnect with the observer. You return to the sky behind the clouds. And from that sky, your next choices begin creating a new trajectory. In the next part, we move into the turning point the moment you shift from feeling like life is happening to you into realizing you can influence your experience through state, story, and strategy, without forcing or controlling anything. There comes a moment in every inner journey where the landscape changes, not because the world suddenly becomes kinder or easier, but because you encounter yourself differently. Up until now, much of your life has been shaped from the inside of the loop, where things feel predetermined, where circumstances feel bigger than your breath, where you move through days reacting rather than creating. But the shift you're experiencing tonight is subtle and profound, the movement from being the one caught in the river to the one who stands on the riverbank, choosing where to place the next step. This is the turning point, and it doesn't arrive with fireworks. It arrives in the quiet recognition that you are no longer willing to be pulled by unconscious currents. The victim state isn't a flaw. It's a default mode your system adopted to keep you safe. When you feel overwhelmed, your breath tightens, your awareness narrows, and your story becomes simple. I have no choice. That story is comforting in its own way because it relieves you of responsibility, but it also strips you of agency. When you begin observing your breath and sensing the inner gap, that story weakens. You realize that even in difficult moments, you have one place where choice is always available, the quality of presence you bring to the moment. That presence is the creator's stance, not the stance of someone trying to control reality, but someone learning to collaborate with it. State shapes story, Story shapes strategy. Strategy shapes outcome, change the state, and everything downstream shifts with it. To make this shift concrete, imagine 3 real-world scenes: money, relationships, and leadership, and notice how presence transforms each. Scene 1. Money. You're looking at a bank balance that triggers tightening in your chest. In the victim state, the breath becomes shallow and urgent. The story forms instantly: I'm behind, I'm failing, there's not enough. From that story, the strategy is fear-based hoarding, avoidance, or frantic, unfocused action. These strategies create evidence that poverty is inevitable. The loop continues. But pause. Inhale gently. Feel your diaphragm expand by even a few millimeters. Notice the gap at the top of the breath. In that small stillness, you sense a different story emerging. This moment is information, not identity. Your state shifts from contraction to clarity. From that clarity, the strategy changes. Instead of panic, you prioritize, you reach out, you take one grounded action instead of 10 frantic ones. The outer situation hasn't changed, but you have. And because you changed, the trajectory of your financial life begins to shift as well. Not through force, but through coherence. Scene 2. Relationship. A conversation turns tense. A loved one says something sharp. In the victim state, your breath spikes, your chest hardens. Story forms instantly. They don't respect me, I'm being attacked. From this story, the strategy is defensive. Withdraw, attack, or shut down. The other person feels your field tighten and responds in kind. The loop repeats. Now, imagine the same moment with awareness. The trigger lands, your breath tightens, but you notice it. Instead of reacting, you inhale once, slowly. You observe the gap, your story softens. We're both activated. This isn't about worth, it's about overwhelm. The strategy shifts from defense to presence. You speak slower. The tone changes. The other person feels your steadiness and calms. Love returns not because you forced harmony, but because you became the mountain in the room. This is the creator's stance, responding from alignment rather than impulse. Scene 3. Leadership. You're responsible for a group at work, at home, or in a project. A problem arises that everyone looks to you to solve. In the victim state, the breath collapses into pressure. The story: I have to fix this alone. The strategy becomes overexertion, micromanagement, or silent resentment. People around you feel your stress and contribute their own. The loop grows heavier. But with one conscious breath, you return to the observer. Your story shifts. Leadership isn't fixing, it's stabilizing the field. From this story, the strategy transforms. You communicate clearly. You hold space instead of collapsing. You delegate. You listen. Your presence organizes the room the way the eye of a storm organizes the winds around it. You're not performing leadership, you're embodying coherence. And coherence is something people instinctively follow. These scenes reveal a pattern when you shift your state. The loop loses power. You stop collapsing into old meanings and begin generating new ones. You stop being a character trapped in the script and start becoming the one who gently rewrites it. This doesn't mean life becomes effortless or that you bypass challenges. It means challenges no longer define you. You meet them from center, not from chaos. The creator state isn't about asserting dominance over reality. It's about aligning with the deeper intelligence moving through you. The same stillness the Egyptians called the silence before creation. The Buddhists called the clear sky, the Kabbalists called the breath of neshama. When you act from this stillness, your steps feel guided, your timing improves, serendipities increase. Not because you forced anything, but because coherence tunes you to the possibilities that were always present but previously hidden by inner noise. In the next part, we move into the philosophical conclusion, a human message about dignity, belonging, and meaning. A reminder that stillness isn't withdrawal, it's participation at the deepest level of reality. And from that place, you begin to understand what it truly means to walk through the world coherent, awake, and connected. When you trace every practice, metaphor, and shift we've explored tonight to its essence, you arrive at a simple but radical truth: you belong here, not in some metaphysical sense alone, but in the deeply human sense, the sense that your breath, your awareness, and your presence have weight and meaning in this world. The zero-point field is not just a metaphor for infinite possibility. It is a reminder that beneath the noise of your thoughts lies a stillness that has been with you since the moment you arrived on this earth. That stillness is your dignity. It's the part of you the world hasn't managed to touch. Even in your hardest seasons, much of modern life teaches you to measure your worth by what you produce, achieve, fix, or endure. But what if your greatest contribution has always been the quality of presence you bring to your experience? What if the field you generate your calm in chaos, your compassion in conflict, your clarity in confusion is a form of public art? Not art in museums, but art expressed through the atmosphere you create around you. Think of the rare moments when someone's grounded presence changed the tone of a room. Think of the moments when a stranger's kindness softened your day, or when someone's quiet steadiness made you feel safe. Those moments didn't require brilliance, achievement, or perfection. They required coherence. Stillness is not withdrawal. Stillness is participation without distortion. It's showing up in a way that doesn't add unnecessary turbulence to the collective field. When you breathe from awareness rather than fear, you broadcast a frequency that others instinctively feel. You become a stabilizing presence, someone who doesn't escalate the storm, but helps others find their center within it. This is not small. This is the quiet architecture of a compassionate world. And beneath that stillness lies something even deeper meaning. Not the kind of meaning forged through accomplishment or external validation, but the natural meaning that arises when you witness your own life from the riverbank. When you see yourself not as someone behind or ahead, but as a living expression of awareness moving through time. When you stop asking, "Am I enough yet?" and begin asking, "What is this moment inviting me to feel, to learn, to release?" This shift reveals a truth. Many people overlook the observer within you is not cold or detached. It is profoundly compassionate. It watches your struggles without judgment. It witnesses your fear without condemnation. It sees your patterns not as failures, but as attempts to protect yourself. That awareness is your deepest ally, your quiet companion, your original wholeness. When you rest in that awareness, even briefly, you feel a sense of belonging that no external achievement could ever give you. In this sense, stillness becomes an act of service not because you're trying to save anyone, but because coherence radiates naturally. It's like a candle placed in a dark room. The candle isn't trying to illuminate the space, it simply is what it is. The light does the rest. When you breathe from your center, you become that candle. You illuminate not by effort, but by presence. This is why agency without grandiosity matters. You are not here to dominate the field or bend the universe to your will. You are here to participate in the unfolding of your life with awareness, humility, and curiosity. You are here to collaborate with the intelligence that breathes through you. When your actions arise from this place, you feel less like an isolated self navigating a hostile world, and more like a conscious participant in an ever-evolving dance. Humans have always lived with uncertainty. The ancient Egyptians faced floods and famine. The Buddhists confronted impermanence at every turn. The Kabbalists wrestled with the tension between form and spirit. Yet across all traditions, one message endured: meaning emerges not from controlling life, but from meeting life with awareness. The zero-point field inside you, the stillness behind your thoughts, is the birthplace of that awareness. And here is the beautiful irony: the more you rest in stillness, the more alive you become. Not numb or distant, but present. You notice the softness in someone's voice. You feel the subtle shift in your breath when a truth lands. You catch the moment when fear tries to tighten your chest, and you choose to breathe instead. Life becomes richer, not because circumstances change, but because your relationship to experience becomes more intimate. In the end, tuning tonight is not about becoming a different person. It's about remembering the person you were before the loop hardened around you. The child who breathed freely, the young version of you who felt wonder easily, the one who sensed the world not through fear, but through curiosity. That part of you still exists, not in memory but in the field beneath your thinking. It's waiting for your awareness to return. As this part of the journey closes, let this simple truth settle into your chest: you are not behind, you are not broken, you are not too late. You are exactly where your next breath can reach you. And from that breath, a new way of being can begin. In the final part, we'll complete the ritual together: a coherent breathing sequence, a chosen word, and a declaration that anchors you into the observer as you step back into your life. Before you leave this space, I want you to experience a final tuning. Not a performance, not a technique, but a simple ritual that aligns your breath, your awareness, and your intention. Think of it as sealing the shift you felt tonight, not through force, but through coherence. This is an educational, contemplative practice, not medical guidance, and you can adjust or pause at any moment. First, sit or stand in a way that lets your chest and abdomen move freely. Let your shoulders soften just a little. Bring your attention to the space around your heart, not to fix anything, but to sense it. You've carried many versions of yourself through your life. Let this moment be a gentle acknowledgement of all those selves. Now we take 3 coherent breaths together. Breath 1. Inhale slowly through your nose, not deep, just soft, letting the air widen the ribs. Pause for a moment in the gap. Exhale gently through the nose, a release rather than a push. Feel the slightest settling, like dust falling through a beam of light. Breath 2. Inhale again, letting the breath reach a little lower, maybe the diaphragm. Pause in the stillness at the top, the same stillness the Egyptians called the silence before creation. Exhale, feeling your shoulders loosen by 1 degree. Notice the simple truth: the world hasn't changed, yet something inside you has already become quieter. Breath 3. Inhale into the heart space, imagining breath moving around the chest like a soft glow. Pause once more. Exhale slowly, sensing yourself return to the riverbank, the observer, not the river. Take a moment here. This is your coherence. This is your tuning. This is your connection to the zero-point field within you, the unconstructed space where you can meet your life with clarity instead of repetition. Now, choose one word, not a wish, not a goal, but a frequency, a tone you want your inner field to broadcast. It can be something like clarity, ease, courage, softness, stillness, trust, openness, presence. Let the word come to you rather than reaching for it. When it arrives, rest it gently in your chest as if placing a small stone in water. And when you're ready, speak this quietly to yourself, out loud if possible, or silently if needed: I choose to, your word, as the observer. Feel the resonance of that choice. Feel how it settles into your breath, your posture, your awareness. You're not commanding the universe. You're aligning with it. You're not forcing a timeline. You're tuning your field. And from this tuning, new trajectories naturally emerge. If this journey tonight touched something in you, if it helped you remember the riverbank, the sky behind the clouds, the stillness beneath the breath, then stay connected to this frequency, not just by watching, but by participating, by choosing coherence even once a day, by returning to the gap for a second or two, by remembering that your presence is not small, it shapes the atmosphere around you. If you're ready to keep tuning, to keep exploring the field of awareness that quietly shapes your reality, then subscribe to this frequency. Not for content, but for continuity, for community, for the reminder that you're not walking this inner landscape alone. Take one more soft breath, feel the inner chamber open, and carry this tuning into the rest of your night.